All right, hello. Welcome to the Cinder Weekly meeting for 30th of June 2021. There's a lot on the agenda, so I guess I should get moving along. Um, so a lot of updates, which I guess is good. That means stuff has been happening. So I want to welcome our new Cinder core, Sophia. So let me paste the link. She's been doing good work, and we expect her to be a lot of help in reviews and stuff coming up. Um, well, I lost the Etherpad. What's going on? Yeah, so that's good news. So congratulations, Sophia, and look forward to seeing more and more reviews. Okay, and then just minutes ago we had the Cinderlib Wallaby release. And that's 4.0.0. Whoops. Yeah, so the stable Wallaby branch actually was just cut like seconds ago. So that's good. And then master is going to be Xena development. So things will proceed as normal for a while. So that's good. And congratulations, Gorka, for getting that library together. And thanks, Rajat, for helping out getting the release together. Okay, you may have seen the announcement about the next PTG. So you can start planning ahead. It's going to be virtual, which I guess is sort of what everybody expected, but still. Hopefully someday we will have a non-virtual PTG again. Anyway, the information's in the email. I put the link in IRC. Sorry, I'm like really incoherent today. So the usual thing, please register. It's free, but that way they can track the numbers and stuff. I have not started a planning Etherpad yet because I'm waiting for the results of what the name of the Y release will be, which should be happening soon. I believe the TC selected something, but hasn't announced what it is because they're checking for trademark infringement and stuff. So hopefully
Correct.
that'll get cleared soon. We may be having Etherpad problems here, or not Etherpad. I borrowed my daughter's computer, which she doesn't use because she uses a Chromebook, and we had bought her this Microsoft thing. It's actually an HP machine running Windows, and of course it has decided that it needs to restart because it installed an update while I wasn't looking. Um, so I don't know.
So while you're fighting with that, I'll give a quick update on the naming.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Yoda was the most popular one, of course, which we're anticipating will run into copyright issues. So that's under discussion. The second one was Yeti, which I'm not 100% sure that will get through, but I think it has a better chance than Yoda, unless the Yeti. I know. Yeah. Um, so
I'm
actually,
still
let me
rooting
have,
for you.
yeah, that's not going to happen. We all agreed that would be a disaster. Um, let me see. I might have those backwards. I know I posted it here somewhere. Give me a second. Um, oh, yeah, so I think Yak might happen in if Yoda can't be done, but we're still waiting to hear back from legal as to which options are possible.
Okay. All right, that's a good
Yeah.
update. So as soon as it's announced, I'll create a Etherpad. I Etherpads are free, so I guess I could have created a Y one and then created a Yak one later. But um, hopefully, it's in the next week. We'll know. So we can start planning for the PTG soon. Um, all right, and then community goals for Yeti or Yak or Yoda or you um, are being discussed. So here's a link if you're interested in getting in on that. So there was one proposal floated that I'm going to discuss in a minute because we should probably think about it, whether it's a community goal or not. Julia put a post, I think, that's in this thread, saying that maybe what should happen is that each project should just choose its own technical debt to clean up and just say, hey, we're going to do this, and then that would be tracked instead of everybody doing the same thing. I'm kind of in favor of that, but I haven't replied on the thread. Anyway, if you're interested in what the community goals are or pushing anything, please go ahead and follow that thread and participate in it. And then upcoming, we've got the new driver merge deadline. So I sent out something to the email list. About that. So I just put the link to that in IRC. That's coming up in 2 weeks with M2 is the new driver merge deadline. As far as I know, there's only one new driver. Dell's proposed an NFS driver for one of the current systems they have. So we need to start reviewing that so that it can be merged by the deadline. So cores and new cores, please be aware of that. And then that email has some more information, right? We have this new driver features declaration thing so that we can track those changes more easily. So if you're a driver maintainer and you've got a feature and you want it to appear in Xena, please read the email and act appropriately so that we can make sure the reviews are prioritized. Okay, next thing, Xena Specs. So the spec freeze happened last week. Unfortunately, there's currently a problem with the OpenDev publication job. So if you look at the website to see what specs have been approved for Xena, you won't see them. So that's being worked on as we speak. OpenDev is aware of that. I do need some reviews on this thing. I've got a patch up that moves. There were some specs that were approved for Wallaby that didn't happen and were moved to Xena around M3 last cycle. So those, I officially moved them over to the Xena directory and set up redirects. So that's what that patch is. So when you have a minute, it should be a quick review for anyone. Although it won't have any effect till OpenDev fixes the publication thing. And then the final announcement is block storage API v2 update. So link in IRC. Okay. I could use a review on I guess both of the Cinder patches. So the API ref one's pretty simple. It just puts like a word in the API ref. The other one is a little more substantial. So I don't know if you remember at the mid-cycle, I believe, we sort of had volunteers to monitor these patches. So if you're such a person, please do that. Anyway, I need somebody to take a look at the Cinder one. The first Cinder client one, Walt had a question on it, and I haven't responded, so I'll do that today. And then I'll ping the people who had volunteered to watch those manually to go take a look at it. But it would be good to get those done, of course, as soon as possible. We need to release, I want to release a Python Cinder client around M2 so that we can see how much stuff breaks before the actual release. I think everything's in good shape. We patched Rally, we patched OpenStack client, DevStack was okay, Tempest is okay, Grenade, I think I put up a patch there, but I think everything's ready, so we'll see what happens. But of course, we want to like prepare sooner rather than later. Okay, and that's it. Any questions or announcements anyone else has? All right, so don't forget, mark off the PTG on your calendars so that you can attend, and then we'll do planning in the next few weeks. But that's it. Okay, moving along to actual stuff. Okay, so image encryption and decryption has been dragging along for a while. You may remember it back from Train, maybe, is when we approved that spec, and it's been moving along. The current status is this. So as far as the impact on Cinder, the library that does the GPG encryption is going to be Brick. So there's a patch up to put some stuff into Brick to do that. Now, the entire effort is kind of stalled because a key aspect of it was a Barbican change. And Barbican is kind of under personed at the moment. So there hasn't been a lot of attention to get this. Basically, they're going to introduce a secret consumer API so that for secrets stored in Barbican, you could associate them with services that had them in use. So that way, there'd be a warning if somebody went to delete a secret that somebody had registered and was still using it, possibly, assuming everything was working properly. We can make use of that at some point too, for the way we handle stuff in Cinder. But anyway, that's not going to happen. And they've decided, actually, I encourage them to just go ahead and do it, at least as an experimental thing without the secret registration, because really that adds like a nice to have, but isn't strictly necessary, right? Of course, if you delete your secret, right, all your stuff is unusable, so that's bad. But even with the secret API, you own the secret, so you can do a force to delete it even if somebody's registered it. So I think that's not much of a change. Anyway, so they are going to go ahead this cycle and try to complete this without the Barbican API and then add that on next. And I think it's a good idea because that way we can get some Tempest tests and stuff that do an end-to-end test of this thing. Because I think, as with any kind of big effort that depends on a bunch of independent projects, there's going to be some stuff that's going to have to get fixed that'll only be discovered when you actually try to use it. So anyway, my point here is mainly to encourage people to go ahead and review the Brick patch, which I will try to locate and put into the agenda later. So that's the status of that thing. So anyway, it doesn't really impact Cinder a lot, except that if we don't merge the changes into Brick, then whole effort is doomed because there's no way they can actually encrypt the stuff. So there you go. Okay. Just do. All right, so I haven't been. Okay, so we need I'll find that eventually and just add it to the Etherpad. Okay, next topic is, we talked about this at the mid-cycle, I think, or the mid-cycle. All right. All right, so you may recall this discussion. If you don't, you can read the summary in the link in IRC. Basically, we had this discussion. Anyway, stuff has happened in the meantime that makes me think that we need to change directions on this. And an illustration of that is this brick extension patch that I will also link in IRC. So basically what we wanted to do was, the question was, do we just have Pi 3 as a default environment for tox? The downside of that is what tox will use is just whatever the default Python 3 on the system is. And as Eric had pointed out, in some systems right now that's Python 3.9 and we don't even support that. So you'd be running the tests without, on a thing we don't support, which would give you limited information. In order, let's just skip this. Okay, in the meantime, what I discovered on looking at a different patch that we'll also talk about later, our tests were passing, the functional Pi 3 tests for the Brick Cinder client extension were passing, but actually no tests were being run because we had skip missing interpreters true. And the reason we had that was because we had in the default environment Pi 3.6 and Pi 3.8, and we didn't know that somebody would have both. So we had the skip missing interpreters. And so anyway, my recommendation is that we don't do that. That we don't do what we agreed on last time. What we agreed on last time was we would change the default environment. So if you just hit tox, you would run the most recent Python supported, which would be Pi 3.8. I think PEP 8 job, or maybe Fast 8, I forget which. I think it was PEP 8 because it was more stable. And maybe that was it. But at least those two things. There's probably something else, but in order, right. All right, but anyway, I guess what's coming down to, we don't know what people are going to have on their development box. And the general feeling, so what we could do is require everybody to have all the versions of Python you need, which we do, most likely, right? But it's thought that's kind of overkill in the community, that we don't want to discourage people from participating because they got to install 8 Pythons. So I think what we need to do to avoid this kind of problem where we've got this test that looks like it's been passing even though it hasn't, is to make the adjustments that are outlined in that second patch I linked. So I think what we're going to need to do is make skip missing interpreters false and just change the default environment to run the Pi 3 tests. We know in the actual check and in the actual gate, the correct ones are going to be run. So stuff won't be slipping through. The only thing that might be different is that somebody might not catch something that they would catch if they had run everything locally. So basically we'd be in the position we're in now.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
I was concerned about if they were going to end up running it locally on the wrong version of Python 3, but that's what we have a gate for. Like, I don't think I'm really that worried about it the longer I thought about it.
Okay, good. All right, so there have been, I'll have to look through, there have been patches all over the place making these changes, and we've been rejecting them or asking for changes. So I'll dig through and just sort of sort that out at some point. But I think unless anybody has a radical objection, so if you go to that second review, I put a link on it. Well, I better check this because I'm making these claims and I haven't actually looked at this in a while. I think I put a link. Jeremy Stanley had written a letter to the mailing list like a year ago about this topic, and I dug it up and it seemed to make a lot of sense. And now apparently it's not in that particular patch. Anyway, if you look at the commit message for that patch, it explains the whole situation. So if everybody's cool with this, I think we should do this on all the Cinder deliverables. And I think Cinder itself is already set up this way, actually. So it's mainly the other stuff. Okay, enough of that. So if you have a really strong opinion, show up next week and make it known. All right, next topic. right, so we discussed dropping lower constraints job. Okay, oh good, somebody not me. This is from Eric. Okay, Eric's been monitoring the CI jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, we had started this Etherpad at Brian's request to kind of figure out what was actually failing in our gate jobs, see if we actually know what the issues are there that we need to try to trace. I've added a lot of these to this Etherpad that I saw fail. And as far as I can tell, the only interesting thing going on as far as Cinder issues is the whole class of failures around LVM commands crashing. So we've got a couple of pending patches, one still pending for master, and the other still pending for some stable branches that will just retry those commands when they segfault, which seems to basically get us the desired behavior. And I think once we get those landed, which we need to do soon, that should be, as far as I can tell, what all we can really do as far as fixing Cinder bugs to help gate stability right now. So if you find other, Cinder issues, I'm happy to be wrong, but this is really seems to be the only one that is actually rooted in a Cinder problem.
All right, thanks. I guess it would be, well, if you don't have objections, let's keep the Etherpad going for another week or so to see if anything comes up. What I would like to suggest, though, or request is no naked rechecks. Please at least take a look before you hit recheck to see which of the jobs failed so that we can, start picking up on any regularities. And it also gives a message to everybody else that we're not blindly rechecking. So at least at least in your recheck statement, recheck name of the job. If you've dug deep enough, the test that's failed would be helpful. If you notice what happened, that's kind of good. And then we can prioritize how to fix other stuff. But Eric, thanks for your work with all this LBS stuff. And Gorka also had a patch that helped here to change the way we do the retries. So hopefully we'll be stable. It looks like the patch, so let me just put the links here in the meeting, in the IRC. So it looks like everything's merged on master. So we need to backport them because we're seeing the same problems in the stable branches. So we might as well get that fixed too. So great. First link was, what did I get? Okay. So yeah, thanks Eric and Gorka and Sophia have been doing a lot of work on all this. Okay. Next thing is TLS and all the CI jobs. Okay, so Ricolin had proposed enabling TLS and all CI jobs as a community goal for Y. They put up some preliminary patches just to see what would happen if it was enabled in places and to see whether it makes sense. So for us, it affects 2 CI jobs. So one's in the brick. It's a job for the brick Cinder client extension. And when you enable TLS on that job, it works. So I think there's probably no reason not to run it with TLS. So that's so when anybody has time to look at the patch, go ahead and make your feelings known. Now the one that's a problem, and is why we're discussing this, is we've got a job in the Cinder Tempest plugin repo, and it tests the S3 backup plugin that was merged last cycle. So you can see the problem if you look at the patch to enable it, and there's a helpful comment in the original patch that we're not enabling TLS because it breaks something. So I did a little digging. Sophia brought this up like a couple weeks ago. I did a little digging. The error that you see in the job is really similar to one that's reported against AWS itself, which was making me think maybe it's part of the Bodacore library or something, but I don't know. In the meantime, I did communicate with one of the contributors who contributed the S3 backup driver, and he said they're using it in production and they have not seen this error, and that he didn't know why we were seeing it in our CI job. So it could be a problem with TLS proxy in DevStack. It could be a problem with the Swift S3 API, or what was the other option? Oh, or it could be something in Bodacore, that there's something about the way the Swift API is interacting. Because the other thing is, in production, they're not actually using S3. They're using something that has a S3 compatible API. So it's possible that whatever they're using doesn't quite affect Bodacore in the way the Swift one does. I just don't know. So two issues here. One is, it would be interesting to get this solved if somebody had the time and the interest. The other question I had, though, is, do we really need to be running this job with TLS proxy enabled? Does it give us information? The point of the job is to make sure that the backup driver tests work. So part of it might, I mean, you could argue that in real life, people are going to be running it with TLS enabled, so it would be good for us to test it that way. On the other hand, I mean, our main, well, anyway, so that's one argument. The other one would be, I mean, what we want to test is the driver itself, not the environment it's running in. So I wanted to bring that up because if this becomes a community goal, it will become our problem. And it looks like it's not in the Cinder code or in the driver code that this is a problem. It's going to have to be fixed somewhere else. And that, of course, is always exciting, and you never know what's going to happen. But I really wanted to put this out there because I wanted to see if my claim that you don't really need TLS to accomplish what we're trying to do in this job is correct, or if I'm just engaging in wishful thinking because I don't want to face up that we're going to have to try to either work with Swift or with DevStack, or, God forbid, Bodacore. The issue in Bodacore has been open since like 2014, and there are various workarounds that seem to be okay, and people eventually get it to work around, but people still face this problem using actual AWS. So I don't know. So I don't know if people have something they could contribute to the discussion now, or if you want to think about it and we'll revisit it in a week or two. I left notes on the Etherpad that Ricolin mentions in his email that I think I linked to in somewhere, either in the agenda or in the IRC channel, just with this information. So we'll see. All right. So I think it would be nice if we could test with TLS enabled, but on the other hand, I don't know that having it off. I mean, assuming that you know, the developers aren't lying. I mean, it does actually work with TLS in some environments when everything is configured properly and running correctly. Okay. All right. Well, at this point, it's something to think about. If someone is really excited and interested in digging into this, that would be fantastic, because right? It would obviously be better if we just ran it with TLS enabled. On the other hand, I don't know that I want to commit us as a project to making sure that that happens, unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay, that's enough from me on that. Okay, moving along. All right, so question about, I have more questions than answers this week, but that's kind of typical, I think. Okay, so we got the Cinder attachment create command in the CLI. So let me back this up. So Rajat fixed a problem in Cinder where the API request validation for this API call was completely messed up. So if you're curious about that, I encourage you to check out his patch, which has been merged. So nice work on that to get that fixed, Rajat. Thank you. Now, he came across this because he's been working on the Glance Store Cinder driver and realized there was a problem with what he wanted to do with the Cinder client. So he's got a corresponding patch. So, you know, in some of these client bindings, right, if you know in advance that something's going to be a problem, you can anticipate it there instead of making an API call and then failing. And so that's what happened. Basically, in the Cinder client, we did a check incorrectly to make sure that you include the instance UUID, because otherwise the API was going to reject it incorrectly. But for the general case, that's what you're going to have. You would have an instance that you want to attach something to, so no big deal. So here's the question. So in actual client bindings for the block storage API, Rajat's patch that I just linked does, right, it makes this thing optional now. And so you can use the Cinder client classes in your Python program or whatever to create the attachment the way you need it to, and the way Glance Store needs it to, and the way other people might need it to if you're attaching to something that's not a VM. So that's good. But we still have, so the question came up, do we need a release note for this? And maybe yes, maybe no. So the issue is, does it impact actual users of the Cinder client? So the Cinder client shell requires you to have the server ID when you make the attachment create call. So we could leave it the way it is because that's what most people probably would use this for. On the other hand, you got the Brick Cinder client extension. What it does to work around this problem is it just generates a random UUID to pass in, because it's got to have something in that field in order to get the request through. So the Brick Cinder client has been able to work, or the Cinder client extension has been able to work throughout all this problematic stuff. So the question I'm asking is, do we just leave the shell the way it is and then not tell anybody about this fix? Or do we fix the shell? The downside to that is we don't want to encourage people to just monkey around with, creating attachments. And then the other thing is, if what they really want to do is attach to a VM, then they should be supplying the server ID. So we might be making the client less usable by removing the restriction that we currently have. So I don't know. Anyway, that's.
I don't think we are making it like less useful or anything. It's we are basically fixing a bug because we were doing something wrong in the validation, and to make it fail faster, we modified the client. But after all, everything was wrong. Just a series of wrong decisions trying to fix instead of fixing it from the start. I'm okay with adding a release note in case somebody cares about it. but I don't see too many people going to create attachments using the CLI. So,
All right. So with the CLI, would you advise fixing it so it works properly also?
yep.
Okay. All right. So there's that one.
Because I think the CLI is kind of a reference for the API, the REST API. So it should not limit something that the REST API does not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. So Rajat, why don't you update your current Cinder client patch to also make the server ID optional? I hope that's not going to be a problem because of the way that command's constructed. But anyway, if it turns out that it's going to, anyway, take a look at it. So the advice is we'll fix it. Your patch currently fixes it in the client class. Let's fix it in the client shell also and add a release note, and then we'll be completely done with this issue. And if you run into some kind of weird problem, we can talk about it at that point. All right, thanks. Any other comments or? All right, so we're going to try to do the right thing. That's good. Okay. All right, and I think this one's from Luigi. Some small CI fixes. I don't know if Luigi here. Oh, need to scroll the Etherpad, sorry. All right, so we're at the small CI fixes. I think from the color, I think this is Toski. So there's a fix in stable Stein we should look at. There was some other thing. Okay, so reviewers, please note, let's look at these and try to get them moving along. They're small patches, and they will be nice. So I'll commit to looking at them, but of course we need somebody else also.
And yeah, sorry. Hello. Sorry, just right.
Okay.
Sorry,
That's okay.
conflicting meetings. So apart from the first one for Stein, well, at least one is unblocking the Stein because it's complicated.
Okay.
It's dealing with a whole version of Tempest plugins, which will be fixed in a proper way, but for now we need that fix. And the other one is kind of more important, the Zool one, because even though that's an experimental job and probably no one is looking at that, that's one of the last remaining legacy Zool jobs we still have in master. So that's kind of, it's a bit tricky because it's complicated. It does some nasty things with Zool and Ansible, but yeah, and that's it. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. All right, final. Let me just add that link to the. All right, thanks for sticking with those, Luigi. So the Stein one, it would be good to get Stein unblocked because we still do merge stuff in there. We still we don't release from Stein, but still there are patches that are good to put in there. So let's get that merged, and then that other big one will get this thing out of Luigi's life, which would be nice for him and for all of us too. Any other comments? All right, so please take a look at those when you get a chance. Okay, and then this brings us to open discussion. I think Simon's got something he would like to bring up. Open discussion. All right, we've got like 15 minutes for a change for open discussion. Simon, did you have something? You're on. Well, I started looking into your question yesterday, but didn't get very far, so let's discuss it.
Got about 20 things going on.
This has to do with the backport to Victoria.
Oh, yes. Yes. So there's As part of Victoria now, if you've got active, you have to have the flag set that you either enable it or disable it. Okay. And we got it into Wallaby, tried to backport it to Victoria, but Jay said no because it was a feature. I'm not sure it's a feature, it's just a flag. It's always been supported. It's just the way it changed. And now, because that flag is not there, I can't backport any other fixes because the CIs are just failing, immediately going, this driver doesn't support active.
By the way, it wasn't just me who blocked you.
You're a convenient scapegoat today.
Actually, I think, if I look at it, on that particular one.
So do you have the link to the patch? I've actually got it open somewhere.
Yeah, let me put it in the.
But I don't know where. Oh, here, pure storage, of course. I got it.
There it is.
Okay, thanks. So it's basically, if you look in the drivers pure.py, right, it just supports active equals true.
Yep.
As a right property for the base volume driver.
Yep. That's all it's doing.
Which remind me, this was something that was there. It's just the flag didn't get added.
Yeah, the flag didn't get set in Victoria, so it was permanently failing all of the DevStack builds. So when DevStack builds, it looks for that flag, and if it doesn't see it, it just barfs and says, you don't support active, go away. And then doesn't even continue with anything else.
So I guess my question was just, so it's not really DevStack in general, it's the DevStack you're running. So your tests are testing active.
Yes.
It's basically it. So I guess the question
under this new Zool 3 way of doing it, or new Zool 4.
Oh, okay.
But it's not the old Jenkins way. Maybe that's part of it as well. So I've got a problem now where I can't backport any of the other fixes that we need to go back because of this particular one's blocking everything.
Okay. Do other stable cores have a strong objection to changing the vote on this one?
I would normally oppose it if we had actual proper active test in Cinder, because it could be an actual feature like that was disabled, now it's enabled. But considering that we are trusting vendors to properly test this is kind of a vendor certified feature, I would say that it's okay. Kind of, it's like we don't know if it works in master, so how is it different here?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the nice thing is that since not having it true is breaking stuff, and making it true is making stuff work, I guess something's being tested.
Yeah. I did spend some time looking for it. When it first failed, when I first wrote the patch, the first original one, I went and looked and worked out where it was failing, but I can't remember where it was now. And that's how I found out this flag even existed, because I didn't even know this flag had been added into anything.
Yeah, I added that flag because I didn't want all drivers to start running in active and breaking everything if they were not ready for it, because we've had drivers that even have problems with concurrent requests on the same process. So allowing it to run on different processes on different machines was probably going to make a lot of drivers fail. So that's why it is there. And it only fails if you define the cluster variable configuration option. So if You don't configure cluster, the cluster name, then it's fine.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess I could take cluster name out of our CI configuration for Zool, but that's just sort of defeating the object of active-active support.
Yep. Yeah, I was just trying to provide a bit of context on why it is working like that, but I still think it's fine to merge this change.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
I guess, Gorka, when you say you added the flag, this was back in what?
This is the base
Windows or
code
something?
of the active-active. Like the first patch that went in probably added this, as in if you have the cluster name and your driver, the vendor has not been explicit about putting it, it's not even going to run. Because I didn't want operators starting active-active without the vendor even saying that they are okay with it.
Right. Yeah, no, my point was just, it's not like you added this like last week or something. This has been in there a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a objection. This is a weird case. And as Gorka said, I mean, we're relying on the vendors to actually test to make sure that their driver works in this configuration. So it sounds like your tests actually do that. So
Yeah, we've tried this out in a number of different scenarios, and it all works fine, which is why I added the flag in the first place.
yeah.
But obviously I added it too late for Victoria, so that's why I was
Right.
trying to report it.
Okay. I updated my vote, and I'll let Gorka or Brian, you guys can make the final decision.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
I appreciate the additional perspective. I mean, this one was one was kind of on the line with anyway, given that I know Pure does a lot of testing on their own and aren't going to do anything stupid. But I also had to play devil's advocate.
No, I mean, no, and thank you. I mean, we need to have this public discussion so it's clear, what exactly we're looking for with respect to these driver settings. So, no, so this was good to do. Okay.
But I've unblocked, so vote away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks for bringing it up.
But Simon, this was not what you wanted to discuss, actually.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to discuss. I don't know now. You know what? I have no idea what the other thing was. I know there's something I wanted to ask. I know we've got an NVMe driver in OS Brick now, but that only seems to be using the RDMA transport. Does anyone know if there's any plans for doing the FC transport as well?
What transport?
RDMA.
No, the RDMA works, but which one were you asking about?
FC, fiber channel.
Oh, I haven't tested FC. I have tested TCP, and I have a patch app to support it in LVM. And I'm pretty sure it should probably support the FC as well.
Yeah, it doesn't because it looks to me like, transport type is an option that you can set. It defaults in all the tests to RDMA, but with FC, you need to give the -W option to the NVMe connect command to tell it what your host transport WWNs are.
I see. Okay.
The only reason I ask is because we've got a customer beating us up about that, going, "Oh, we want NVMe over fiber channel because our array supports it, and they want it in the Cinder driver." And we're like, "It doesn't even work in those bricks."
Yeah, so I don't know if I could actually make that work with LVM.
Yeah, I don't think
to actually test it.
Yeah, I don't think you could with LVM. I think this is one of these difficult ones that it's only going to be supported by an external device. So how LVM as the reference could test it or use it or write for it, I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that a vendor like yourself would need to add to OSBreak, and either I trust that you have properly tested it, or somebody else who with an array have to validate that it actually works. Because I have tested RDMA and TCP, but that's it.
Yeah, we're doing that next. Okay. And if there was anything else, Brian, that I was going to ask, I seriously can't remember what it was.
Okay. I also got a response from I think there's any reason not. Dell for PowerStore is also interested in using NVMe TCP, but they had a problem that I don't understand.
Brian, this is something
Where
about run ID? Because I was speaking with a colleague from PowerStore, and I know he found an issue in TCP. So I think it's around the run ID. Is that being passed down, or is there a way to pass the run ID down? Sorry, no, I don't have details, but I know there's an issue there.
Okay, and let me.
we would need some details because I have tested it, the OSBreak part bits, with LVM, and it seemed to work just fine. So I don't know if I didn't test it properly or if there is any difference there. But I would be willing to look into it if I get some additional information.
Yeah, so it's Vlad from the PowerStore team. So I can actually, yeah, I'll speak with him and we can get details to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just added something to the Etherpad. This is just in response to that email I sent to the mailing list just about the upcoming driver deadlines. So you don't have to answer this now, but in case that's helpful.
But I think the comment is basically complaining that we don't support multipathing, probably, which is true. We don't support native multipathing. That is a gap in the driver, and I think Deoxia was mentioned in a previous PTG their intention on working on that, but maybe it's not exactly that the problem.
Okay. And then the other question was, should they create a different connector for this instead of using the NVMe OF connector?
No, I think it should be part of NVMe connector because it's just adding additional features that we are currently missing. I'm doing it better. Okay, yeah, it's improving what we have, and this is going to be useful for all the different drivers that use NVMe.
Yeah, I think at the point where I got round to testing our NVMe over Rocky driver, I would have noticed the same thing because we're going to need multipathing as well.
Yeah, and probably the complaint is also not only multipathing, but also within multipathing, supporting multiple namespaces with different LANs on each of them. Similar to what happened with Fiber Channel, I think it was in the pure driver that it was not the same LAN in all the HBA, so it added, I think it was Patrick that added the feature to be explicit about the LAN on each of the paths. So it will need to have something similar here to be able to define namespaces LAN kind of thing.
All right, well, that gives some notes for people who want to continue working on that. Okay, we're just about out of time. Any comments or questions or?
Yeah, Brian, just a quick one there about the support, the Cinter support matrix, on the feature, the snapshot attachment. So, like in our drivers, a snapshot isn't an attachable object, but a volume from the snapshot is. So I'm just wondering, like, we have an X against all of that because we can't attach it, but under the covers, the default behavior will allow us to attach it. So from a customer point of view, I guess we can say, yeah, absolutely, we can attach a snapshot. They don't know what's going on under the covers. So I think it's misleading. Like, we got a few queries and saying, you know, why can't you attach the snapshot? And our response is, well, we can, but there's a volume being created from the snapshot under the covers. So I'm just wondering why it's called out there as a feature. You know, the default behavior should allow every driver to support it. Is that a correct statement? Yes or no?
Yes, that's the correct statement, is that it doesn't limit any Cinder feature not having that possibility. Like you were saying, a volume is created from the snapshot, but that is kind of can be considered like a workaround, because you actually have to create an additional resource. It may be cheap in the backend, so it's okay, but it still may leave a resource there. So it's one of those features that are convenient to have, but does not limit anything in Cinder. So maybe we can. Yep, sorry.
The purpose of that feature was an optimization for backups, right? It's not because users actually want to attach snapshots.
Yep.
So if you have a backend that doesn't natively support doing that, I don't think there's any benefit to adding support to the driver to do it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I take
no benefit.
I think I think potentially what the issue is that customers look at the support matrix and use it as a comparison between different backends, and then they see an X and they see a tick, and then they start asking questions about why you've got an X there, even though they don't truly understand what the feature even is.
Right, and the problem with this case is that it's not really a real proper feature.
So maybe change the matrix to say for backup support or something like that, or required for Cinder backup, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, or split the matrix into convenience features and features that actually limit what vendors can do. I don't know, but yeah.
How many drivers actually do support doing this?
Very few, I would have thought.
Very few, yeah.
Yeah, because I've always kind of wondered if it was even worthwhile to do this in general. But
I can't think of anything that does. They always create a clone from the snapshot.
There's some EMC backend that actually does it, which was why we introduced it, I think.
Which one?
But I do think it's kind of questionable that we even have this as a feature, personally.
VNX.
And VNX, yeah. So there's a few.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like a proprietary feature to me.
Anyway, just thought I'd call it out. You know, I think it is confusing for a customer. And to your point, Simon, exactly. They look at it and say, "How come you can't support that feature?" You know, is it a gap? Is it a gap in your driver? You know,
yeah,
which
is it a gap in your back end? Does your back end not have this functionality that someone else seems to have? And yeah, and it becomes a point of sales contention at that point.
Correct, yeah. Anyway, just said I'd highlight it.
Yeah, we can probably add, or you can propose an improvement on the docs to highlight that this is a convenience feature for backups, and that most drivers don't have this feature, and they use efficient cloning or creating volume from the snapshot, and everything works the same.
Yeah.
And so the convenience is basically that you don't consume another LUN on the back end?
Yeah, and you cannot leave behind a resource if something fails in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys.
I remembered what the other thing was. Oh, God. Let me go and just drop it into the... So there was this review as well, if we could get that final +2 workflow on that one. This is the one where we were talking about black, and I removed all the black stuff and just left it as it was.
Ah, okay. I'll take another look at that.
Thanks.
All right, we're out of time, so I'm going to stop the recording and close the meeting.